Here's a video going through your EIPA dashboard and how to understand it. On the left, we have the school name, your teacher code, the grade level, the students that wrote the exam that are included on the sheet, and then how many students are missing, and then a list of the students that are missing. If you have students that did miss, you can still have them rate this assessment so their data is viewable on this dashboard. And as soon as you have them right, it should right away actually go into this dashboard in terms of the information. On the top, we have a place where you can select the student in this kind of fuchsia color right here. And once you select a student, the graphs will change to reflect that student's data. The first graph, it has the three different literacy strands and their performance. So I can see in the triangle I have decoding, recognition, and phonological as the three different parts. It's showing the class in this turquoise color, the district in the yellow, and then we have that tangerine color for the student. So for this particular student, Alicia, we have actually a weak performance in recognition and a little bit of a weakness in phonological, but they're doing quite well at decoding. So this can help you see at a glance which strand of literacy they are struggling with. Also, when I change students, I'm changing this graph as well, which shows in a different format the same information as this one on the left. So I can see the class, the district, and the student for each strand and where they sit. So once again, we're seeing a weakness in phonological and recognition. But as I change the data, we again will see all of this shift to show the different students' data. On the right, this is maybe the most confusing graph, but it's incredibly useful. It shows you for each individual outcome how the class did and the student as compared to a district for the baseline. So when I take a look at this, I can see that Rita did very well on blending sounds because they were quite a bit higher than the district results on that skill, while the class on the whole actually did a little bit better than the district. But we can see that there was a bit of a gap for final sounds for both the class and for Rita based on this information. The thing that Rita is struggling with the most is substituting phonemes. So we can see that right away from this graph, that is a growth area for Rita, and in fact a little bit of a growth area for the class as well. So this is taking the district results for each one of these outcomes, and then it's telling the gap either above, where it's above the x-axis, or below if it's below the x-axis, so that you can at a glance see where your class has strengths and weaknesses and what they need to work on. Down below we have the student data, and we have coloring of the student based on where they fall kind of within the bell curve. So if they're a green color, they're doing very well. They're at the top of that bell curve. If they're yellow, they're actually on the higher part of the bell curve, so they're doing well, but they're closer to the middle or the average. If we have orange, this is kind of like a watch list of they're struggling a bit, and then red is full on like intervention. We have problems because their score was quite low on this assessment. We also have coloring on each individual score. So if I take a look at the decoding total, I can see that some of these are highlighted green. So it's telling me that they did quite a bit higher than the average, and the average is considering the district and the class average together. Well, if we see red, they did quite a bit lower. If I see this blue or white coloring, the blue is nothing. It just means that it's like every second line to increase readability. But that means that they're somewhere in the middle of the bell curve. So I have that for each individual outcome. So when you see either green or red, you could identify from that that that's either a strength or a weakness for that student. Well, if they're in a normal color, there's no color at all, then they're somewhere in the middle of the bell curve. On the right-hand side, we have a list for each student of what they need to work on. So what this does is it identifies the outcomes for which there's the biggest gap, and it lets you know. So for example, when I look at Pansy Parkinson appears twice. That's a mistake. Anyways, when I look at Pansy, I can see that deleting phonemes and substituting phonemes are two growth areas for this student. And in fact, that actually hopefully matches our data where I have, wrong data here. I was reading that incorrectly. Sorry. For Pansy, it is a regular word and regular word recognition, and I can see that right here. Regular and irregular word are the two growth areas for her. If it's grayed out, like for example for Dean Thomas here, where there's nothing showing up, or very, very light coloring, that means that they did so well, there aren't really growth areas to identify for that student easily, so that's left up to teacher discretion. That's also kind of coming up with a class focus area up here. So we can see that there are 4 different items that are shown, and take these with a grain of salt. Okay, definitely double check it against the data, but just at a glance, these are 4 things that the class needs to work on. So that includes segmenting phonemes, substituting phonemes, isolating final sounds, and irregular word recognition. Those are the 4 things that the class needs to work on the most based on their results. You can see class and district averages here for each total as well as for each individual outcome, so that's very easy to see. And here we have the group generator, which allows you to make groups for centers or maybe for an intervention very, very quickly. It has an extra setting in that it has a maximum percentage. So if students are hitting that maximum percentage, they won't get included in the group. So as an example, let's say that you're running an intervention or some kind of a small group on blend sounds, and you want to find out, okay, if I want to pull 8 students for blend sounds, I don't want to have any students that got over like 70% on that scale. What students should I pull for that intervention? I'm just going to change all the other groups to 0 here. I'll press submit, and it should find for me the 8 lowest students for that particular outcome. So I'm just waiting here, and that should populate right away. The script is slightly slower than the other one. It's doing a bit more. And here we have our 8 lowest students for that skill. If you're running centers, maybe you're doing a center on blend sounds, you want 4 kids there, you have a center on isolating final sounds, so you're going to have 4 kids under 70% there. So we'll just kind of carry that over to a few different outcomes, and I'll just kind of make sure again each time that it's 70%. I'm going to copy paste in to save some time here. Then if I submit that, it should come up then with groupings that make sense, where we're picking the lowest students for each outcome and throwing them into that group. If a student is picked for a group, they won't get picked again. It's only once per group. So it should populate right away here for us. So what we can see is that in this scenario, we don't have any students that are under 70% on letter sounds. We do have 4 for blend sounds, 2 for medial sounds, 4 for segmenting into phonemes, and 2 for substituting. Hopefully you can use this and find it useful in your day-to-day practice in splitting up kids into what they need to work on. If you have any questions, any suggestions, please let me know.